Some people lock their souls out of fear of opening their hearts, and others lock everything up because they know exactly what they're hiding. That man, Guilherme Vargas, was the kind of millionaire who wouldn't smile even with record profits. He only trusted the things, his lawyer and his safe. Everything else was disposable, like an umbrella after the rain. But what no one knew was that the safe held more than money. This safe right here, my friend, no one can open, not even the devil with a crowbar. That's what he said at one of those parties full of caviar and fakeness. The guest's eyes lit up with the challenge. 1 million reais to whoever could open it. Simple as that. But there was a condition, only one try allowed. One mistake. One misplaced click, and the person was out, and out of the house too. All kinds showed up. Hackers, elite locksmiths, former federal agents. Even a famous magician with white gloves and a dramatic gaze. Nothing. The safe wouldn't budge. The bet became legend. Guilherme laughed heartily, more than with profits. It became an ego game, and he loved to win. Money I can lose, but secrets, I take those to the grave. But the universe, my friend, doesn't like people to sure of themselves. It was on a cloudy Wednesday, the kind of sky that looks like it's holding back tears. When he appeared, dirty clothes, patchy beard, worn-out shoes, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. No one knew where he came from or how he got in. He just showed up at the gate, empty-handed, lips cracked in a single sentence. I know what's inside that safe. The guards laughed. The butler almost called an ambulance, but Guilherme stopped. Because that filthy, forgotten man had something no one else there had. Conviction. You want to try? The millionaire asked, half mocking, half curious. The homeless man didn't reply. He just walked in, like he knew the house. Like he'd been there before. Guilherme felt a chill, and for the first time, he didn't smile. The silence in that room wasn't out of respect. It was out of fear. Fear of what was coming. Because some secrets we lock with 7 keys, and others come looking for us, even from under a bridge. So I ask you, who was that man? How did he know about the safe? And most importantly, what was inside that maid? A millionaire trembled like a child in the dark. If you like a good story, hit the like and subscribe, or you'll miss the rest of this tale. Because what comes next is a revelation like no other. Asterisk the man, whose origin no one knew, didn't ask permission nor looked around. He walked slowly, dragging his feet like someone carrying the past on his back, but he had a clear destination, the safe. The room was full, but the silence was heavier than gold. The millionaire, who used to laugh at everyone's failed attempts, now only watched, eyes fixed, jaw clenched, like someone who recognizes a ghost, but pretends not to. You said you know what's in there. Fine, speak now, or leave my house. The homeless man stopped, looked at the safe, then at Guilherme, and then he said something that even made the wall clock miss a beat. There's more than money. In there's death. The phrase hit like lightning. No one understood, but the millionaire did. Oh, he understood, because in that instant, he turned pale. He made the sign of the cross discreetly and stammered, Who are you? The man didn't answer. He just walked to the corner of the room, where an old black and white family portrait hung. He ran his fingers over the dusty frame and murmured, She was beautiful, your mother. The crowd started to stir. What does he mean by that? They whispered, but Guilherme, the master of the house, said nothing. He was in shock. He recognized that look, that voice. Are you from the Pereira family? He asked in a near whisper. The homeless man gave a crooked smile. It wasn't happy. It was bitter. The kind life carves with pain. You never knew my name. But your father did. He knew it very well. That hit like a slap. Guilherme staggered a step back. A guard approached, thinking it was time to remove the intruder by force. But Guilherme raised a trembling hand. Let him speak. At that moment, the homeless man pulled from his pocket a worn piece of paper, folded so many times it looked ready to crumble. He opened it carefully. It was a photo, a sepia photo, of a boy with sad eyes, next to a woman wearing a crucifix necklace. That woman, it's the same one in the portrait, whispered one of the guests. Alarmed, the man nodded. She raised me, taught me to read, to pray, gave me soup when I had a fever, until one day she vanished. Guilherme collapsed onto the sofa. Sweat ran down his temple. The safe, right there in the middle of the room. seemed to breathe, almost pulse. "Do you want to open the safe or dig up my dead?" growled the millionaire. "I just want the truth, because some lies weigh more than hunger." And then he said, "And I know the combination, because your father gave it to me." Before he disappeared, the room exploded in murmurs. Eyes widened. Gilhern rose as if to stop him, but his legs trembled too much, because there was one thing he never expected in this whole challenge. Someone from the past, coming not just to open a safe, but to rip open his chest. And so, with callous fingers and dirty hands, the homeless man approached the safe and turned the first number. The sound of the first click was so sharp, so precise, it felt like a gunshot. In the middle of the room, a click not just of metal, but of memory. The man spun the safe's dial with the calm of someone who had done it 1,000 times. But no one there understood how a man who slept on cardboard could know a secret, locked away for decades. Only Gilhern understood, and that's why. He was cold with fear. "This is impossible," said someone in the back. But the old man, without even turning around, replied, "Impossible is pretending your whole life you're not guilty." The second number came quicker, another click. This time the silence turned to panic. Gilhern jumped up. "Stop," he shouted. "You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I know all right," the man replied, calm as ever. "I'm just opening what you locked away out of fear, but there are things that don't fit in metal, and I've carried that longer than you imagine." The guests began leaving, one by one. The party had become awake. Only the nosiest, or bravest, stayed to witness the end. The third number was at his fingertips. But before turning, the homeless man paused, turned to the millionaire, and asked, "Do you really want me to continue?" Gilhern was pale as wax. His hands trembled. His soul weighed heavy. His eyes, oh, his eyes already knew what was inside. "If you open that safe, you destroy everything. My family's name, my story, my reputation." The man smiled, ironically funny. "You care more about your name than the truth." And then he spoke, softly but clearly, as if freeing an old pain. "The last time I saw your father, he took me to that basement, said he was locking up a mistake, a sin, and that if the past ever came back, I should use this combination. That was the last thing he did before disappearing." Gilhern closed his eyes tightly, as if trying to hold back tears or a scream. "He didn't disappear. He died in an accident." The man stared at him with pity. "Yeah, that was the version you told." The millionaire staggered, leaning on the fireplace, and the man, he spun the safe's dial for the last time. The final click echoed like a sentence. The safe was open. "Do you want to see, or would you rather keep pretending to be a king when your throne is rotting inside?" he asked. Gilhern hesitated. For a moment, he looked like a lost boy. The safe was wide open. All it took was pulling the door. And when they did, what was inside wasn't money. It wasn't gold. It wasn't documents. It was something that made Gilhern's knees give out and his voice vanish. But that, I'll tell you in the next chapter. Asterisk inside that safe, there was a dark wooden box lined with red fabric, already faded by time. And on top of it lay something that made no sense. To outsiders, a child's chain with a small angel-shaped pendant. It wasn't an expensive jewel. It didn't shine. It didn't impress. But when Gilhern saw it, he collapsed. "Get that out of here," he shouted, voice cracking, eyes brimming. But it was too late. The homeless man already held the chain in his hands, carefully, reverently, as if it were the last memory of a time the world had tried to erase. "Do you know what this is?" he asked, raising the pendant into the air. "Of course I do," the millionaire screamed, now almost unrecognizable, on his knees on the carpet. "It belonged to my sister." "No," the man replied softly, "it belonged to my daughter." The words floated in the air like a death sentence. The entire room fell silent. The few who were still there looked at each other, trying to grasp what it meant. But the millionaire, he already knew, because in that moment, the past returned in full, like a storm knocking down everything built out of pride. Gilhern swallowed hard, tried to speak, but only a whisper came. She died. She was born sick." The man bowed his head. A single tear hit the floor. "She didn't die, Gilhern. She was taken, on your father's orders, because he said she was." "Shameful." "No, yes." The old man pulled an ancient, almost crumbling piece of paper from his pocket, a birth certificate. Child's name, Clara. Mother's name, Esther Lopes. Father's name, Romualdo Pereira Vargas, Romualdo. Guilherme's father, your family took my daughter from me, said she was a maid's child by an unknown man, sent her to a convent, lied at the hospital, and said she hadn't survived. But she did, Guilherme, and the worst part, she grew up thinking she was worthless, that she was trash. Guilherme had his face buried in his hands, sobbing. That's why your father gave me the combination, because at the end of his life, he was ashamed of what he had done, and afraid of what you become if you followed the same path. The millionaire looked up, red-faced, swollen, humiliated. Do you want money? Take it all. I'll pay you whatever. The homeless man shook his head. Money? I just want you to know what you've done. I want you to carry this guilt, because while you were betting $1 million on a safe, I spent nights searching for a daughter they told me was dead. Is she still alive? Guilherme asked, trembling. I don't know. Last I heard, she was 17, ran away from the convent, vanished into the world. The child's chain swayed between the old man's fingers like a pendulum of pain. Guilherme collapsed to the floor, staring into the void, and the room felt like a funeral chamber. But the worst was yet to come, because as the homeless man left the room, he stopped at the door and said, she had a birthmark on her left shoulder, just like your daughter. Guilherme's eyes widened. My daughter? Sophia? Have you ever stopped to think if she's really only your daughter? And then he was gone. Guilherme stood in the middle of the room, staring at the door that still swayed from the man's departure. That question echoed like a hammer in his chest. Have you ever stopped to think if she's really only your daughter? The words haunted him. They weren't just a doubt. They were a threat, a scar, a sentence. Because Guilherme knew very well that his daughter, Sophia, wasn't like the rest of the Vargas family. She had different features, a gentler way, a calmness that didn't match the family's arrogance. And more than that, she had that birthmark on her left shoulder. Guilherme got up slowly, as if his bones were filled with lead. The room was empty, but the safe, now left wide open, seemed to mock him. Inside, beyond the chain and documents, there was a letter, sealed with red wax, handwritten. It was from his father, Romualdo. He hesitated for a moment, then opened it with trembling hands. The old handwriting seemed to scream from beyond the grave. Son, if you're reading this, it's because the past has come to collect. I made mistakes, grave ones. I took a life that wasn't mine and decided her fate with the coldness of a man who never looked into the eyes of a bastard child. But she, Clara, was your sister, and she was sent away because society wouldn't allow it. That's the only mistake that still haunts me, and so I leave you with this truth, hoping you'll be better than I was. The letter shook in Guilherme's hands, his vision blurred. In that moment, he felt orphaned, not of a father, but of honor. Better than you were. I'm the same or worse. The truth stabbed deep. The fame he built, the businesses he multiplied, the properties, the trips, the friends of appearance. None of it mattered now, with the possibility that he'd even lied to his own daughter. That's when a memory crashed down on him. Sophia, at 4 years old, crying after a nightmare, and saying, Daddy, I dreamed of a woman who called me Clara. She hugged me and said she'd come back. At the time, he dismissed it as childish nonsense. Now, it made more sense than any diploma on his wall. Guilherme rushed to his office, opened the drawer where he kept the DNA test, results done years ago, out of paranoia, grabbed the envelope, opened the results, and there it was, incomplete compatibility. Doctors said it was common among biological parents and children, could be genetic interference. But now, it sounded like a warning he had ignored. His head spun. The world felt too small for so much guilt. He splashed water on his face, looked in the mirror, and saw his father. You destroyed lives. You damned old man. And now I'm following the same steps. The phone rang. It was his daughter's school. Mr. Vargas, something happened with Sophia today. She had a breakdown and kept repeating the name of a woman no one knows. Said she felt her close. Can you come pick her up? Guilherme dropped the phone without answering because in that moment, he knew the girl was sensing her mother or something even deeper. And maybe he was never a father at all. There's pain that cuts the flesh, and there's pain that echoes inside the chest, repeating the same sentence for years. Gilham stood there, frozen in the school hallway, hands sweaty, head pounding, heart hanging on the edge of one word. Daughter. But was she? The staff member looked at him with pity. Sophia was in the back courtyard, sitting alone, arms around, her knees, head down like someone protecting secrets from a storm. Outside, the sky darkened slowly. That late afternoon smelled like wet earth and carried the weight of morning. He walked toward her, every step demanded a kind of forgiveness he hadn't yet earned. When he approached, she didn't look up. She just whispered, "I saw her again." The voice was weak, but full of certainty, of memory. Gilham knelt with difficulty, feeling his spine creak. Time passes, but certain truths take longer. Who, sweetheart? She looked up, tears in her eyes, but the silent kind, the worst kind. The woman, the one who always appears in my dreams. She called me Clara again. Gilham froze. The words from the letter, the phrases from the homeless man, the scars of the past, they all collided in that moment. He wanted to deny it, say it was childish nonsense, but his body wouldn't let him. He was trembling. Sophia looked deep into his eyes, as if trying to dig to the bottom of everything he had hidden. Daddy, am I really your daughter? Silence, the kind that crushes your ribs. Gilham tried to touch her face, but Sophia pulled back. She stood up, turned away, because sometimes it feels like I don't belong anywhere. The pain he felt wasn't new, but now it had a name, a face, and he couldn't shove it into a safe anymore. Sophia, listen, I'm trying to understand all this too, but I swear on everything holy, you are my daughter. Even if the blood says otherwise, I am your father. She turned slowly. Then what about my mother? Why did you never talk about her? Gilham choked. Because the truth was simple. He never spoke of her because he never knew. His father had erased that woman from history with the same coldness. He used to erase debts because I was a coward. She nodded, like someone who had expected it, like someone who already knew that now it's my turn to be brave. Sophia, I'm going to find out who I am, even if I have to go alone. No, you can't just leave like that. You're still a child. I'm more mature than most adults in your family, Dad. And there, with burning eyes and a backpack on her shoulders, she walked away. No yelling, no slamming doors, no drama. She just left, like those who were born rejected but choose to write their own story. And Gilham was left with an empty soul and a heart full of questions. Because what he feared most had happened. The only person who called him Dad now doubted it. That night had no moon, no wind, no sound, only the echo of the door closing and the emptiness pounding in his chest like a hammer on old iron. Sophia was gone. She took only a backpack, a light sweater, and the courage she didn't inherit from Gilham, but maybe from her mother. Gilham spent the first hours pacing the house like a caged animal. In every corner, he saw traces of her, the book with a dried flower as a bookmark, the sneakers thrown on the rug, the scarf that still smelled like childhood. But her, she was no longer there. He grabbed the phone and called the police. My daughter is missing, sir. How old is she? 12. But she's got the soul of 30. They checked the house cameras, her phone history, the GPS on her watch. Nothing. It was as if the world had swallowed Sophia. But Gilham knew she hadn't vanished. She'd gone looking for the piece of herself that was missing. He went to the safe, now always open, and pulled out Clara's photo again. He stared into her eyes, as if demanding an answer. Where did she go to find you? But the portrait only answered with silence, the same silence of guilt we try to forget. Without thinking, Gilham put on a coat, grabbed his keys, and left. No driver, no bodyguards, just fear, the portrait, and a name whispered through tears, P-Dade. The city where Clara's story stopped, and maybe where Sophia's would begin. P-Dade was the kind of place that smelled like hand-washed, laundry and fresh brewed coffee, narrow streets, twisted trees, and silence that felt like an abandoned church. Gilham arrived at dawn. The headlights of his car carved shadows into the dirt road. He went straight to Casa Estrella, the shelter where Clara had lived. He knocked, with the urgency of someone who had lost something irreplaceable. The woman who answered, in a light blue smock and graying hair, furrowed her brow upon seeing him. Are you Clara's family? I am. In the worst way, but I am. She gestured for him to come in. The room smelled of lavender and dust. At the center, a portrait of young Clara smiling with 2 children in her lap. She was a light here, until the end. Died saying she dreamed of finding her daughter again. And the girl, Sophia, did she come here? The woman nodded. She picked up an old notebook and opened to a page. Girl, dark eyes, named Sophia. Came asking about Clara. Cried. Said she would search alone. Left a note. It was a folded piece of paper, written in blue ink. If my mother is dead, I'll go wherever she's still alive inside me. I don't want more lies. I don't want more walls. I just want truth. Gilham closed his eyes, took a deep breath. Where did she go next? She asked about the convent where Clara was sent. The Sisters of St. Masha's. Gilham's heart sank. Does that convent still exist? It does, but it's more prison than refuge. Sitting in that wooden chair, he understood. Sophia wasn't running away. She was digging for roots and for pain, and he'd have to follow. The convent of St. Masha's was an old structure with thick walls, stained glass windows, and cracked crosses. It didn't smell of faith. It smelled of a smothered past. Gilham arrived at the gate holding Clara's photo. He rang the bell. A tired-eyed nun answered. I'm looking for my daughter. She came looking for her mother. The nun looked at the photo, then at Gilham, and said nothing for long seconds. Wait in the chapel. The wait was long as the life he wasted pretending he was in control. When he was finally called, he stood before the Mother Superior, a tall, austere woman with cold eyes. Your daughter was here, yes. Asked about Clara Lopes. Stirred where she shouldn't. Brought unrest. Is she still here? She left last night. Crying. Said she didn't want to belong to anyone anymore. Where did she go? She didn't say. Only left this. It was a paper, another letter, shaky handwriting. My mother was thrown away out of. Shame. My father held on to me out of pride. I don't want to live off scraps. When I find myself, maybe I'll return. The mother looked at Gilham sternly. Clara was a good girl, but she suffered. Her family, yours, treated her like sin. Don't repeat that with your daughter. And in that moment, the man who once bet millions on secrets stood exposed. No excuses, no defenses. Sophia wasn't there. But the past was everywhere. Rain was falling when Gilham returned to the car, the thin, steady kind, the kind that soaks without warning. He stopped in the middle of the road and screamed, a scream that didn't ask for answers, it asked for punishment. He spent the night slumped over the steering wheel, remembered Sophia at 3 years old, singing out of tune in the living room, the first time she said daddy, the time she fell off her bike and said, you're not going to leave me, right? And now she was alone, on the run, because he had never answered that question the way he should have. At dawn, he saw something by the roadside, a paper under a rock. It was another letter, a final one. Dad, if that name still means anything, I don't want to disappear forever. I just need to breathe outside your story. Someday, if I remember how to love, I'll come back. Don't look for me, earn me. Gilham broke down, because, for the first time, the heir didn't want inheritance. She wanted truth. Months passed like shadows. Gilham never returned to the mansion, sold companies, closed accounts, donated what he could, disappeared from the media. Rumors said he'd gone mad. That guilt had devoured him, but few knew. He chose to vanish. He moved to a simple village with a wooden porch and a wood-burning stove. Every week, he wrote letters. He never sent them, just wrote. Letters to Sophia. One read, if you ever come back, I don't want you to find me on a throne, but sweeping the sidewalk, like someone trying to clean up the tracks of a dirty life. He began visiting shelters, spoke with abandoned girls, gave books, told stories. He said he once had everything and lost it, not by bad luck, but by lies. And in his eyes, there was something rare, sincere shame. Astor's gold. Gilham's life had become a routine of silence. He woke up early, brewed fresh coffee, sat on the porch, and read Bible passages he'd never understood before. Not out of faith, but guilt, habit, trying to find meaning in words he once mocked. The house was small, but it had soul. The walls smelled like damp wood. The floorboards creaked like they remembered every step. In the fridge, a few groceries. In the cabinet, books and more books. On the mantel, a framed photo of Clara, the real Clara, smiling in a field, still young, with the angel necklace around her neck. It was a quiet Sunday morning. Gray sky, Warm air. Time unsure. Gilherme was sitting on the porch, a blanket over his legs, a folded newspaper beside him. That's when he heard K-N-O-C-K, K-N-O-C-K. The sound was soft as a whisper, but it carried something different. He rose slowly, adjusted his glasses, and walked to the door. When he opened it, his eyes took time to focus, but when they did, they froze. In front of him stood a young woman in her 20s, light brown skin, deep dark brown eyes, simple jeans, a knit sweater around her neck, a necklace, the angel pendant. Gilherme choked. Clara? He murmured. The young woman smiled gently, eyes glistening. No, my name is Clara Sophia, but they say I have my mother's face. The old man covered his mouth. His legs went weak. He leaned against the door frame, breathing heavily, like holding in years of grief. I'm your granddaughter. She pulled a yellowed envelope from her bag, handed it to him delicately. His hands trembled as he took it. My mother left this, said one day I'd know when to deliver it. He opened it slowly. Inside, a handwritten letter, Sophia's handwriting. Dad, when I left with pain, but also with hope. Hope that you would take off your armor. Clara Sophia is my daughter. She was born in the middle of chaos, but raised with love. The same love you once promised me and failed to give. But maybe you can give it to her. I don't know if I'll come back, but if she's found you, then something has changed. Be better than you were with me. She deserves it. Gilherme pressed the letter to his chest. He cried silently. The young woman stood there, giving him time. Your mother, is she alive? But far. They say she works in riverside communities, teaching kids, delivering supplies, sheltering orphans. Says she'll return someday, but no one knows when. Gilherme wiped his tears, then opened the door fully. Would you like to come in? She smiled and stepped inside. And there, in that small house full of past, a new story began. A story without a safe, without a key, only truth. The following months were all about starting over. Not an easy start, a restart for someone walking on the ground they once helped crack. Gilherme now woke up earlier than before, not to chase stocks or contracts. He woke up because Clara, Sophia, woke up, and with her, the piece of his daughter that he had lost also woke. In the beginning, their coexistence was quiet, shy. He made the coffee, she set the plates. They talked little, but over time, the silence stopped being absence. It became care. Grandpa, Mom used to say you were afraid of mirrors. He paused, shook a spoon midair. Afraid? No. I just don't like seeing a man I didn't choose to be. The girl, with her 20 years and the wisdom of a grandmother, replied, well, now I see someone else, and that's how the idea came about. On an ordinary Sunday, sitting under the shade of a mango tree, Clara Sophia opened a notebook and started drawing. What if there was a place where girls like my mother were truly welcomed, where no one told them they weren't worth anything? Gilherme looked at the notebook, saw the sketch of a simple building, wide windows, trees around it, and a name scribbled at the top, Clara Foundation. What's this? It's the future, Grandpa. If you want, we can build it together. That same night, Gilherme went through the last papers from the safe. He still had some savings, some assets, possible donations. He ran the numbers. It would work, but not just with money. It would take a name, a story, a legacy. They registered it legally, rented an old house, renovated, painted it white, then blue, then yellow, sun-colored. Grandpa, she said. In 1 month, they had for girls. Into 16. By 6 months, over 40 girls with similar stories. Abandoned, rejected, invisible. But there, everyone had a name, had warm food, a clean bed, and affection. Clara Sophia was the director. Gilherme told stories. He became the official storyteller of sad tales with twisted endings. He spoke to the girls like someone apologizing to the world, like someone who saw in them the daughter he lost, the woman he never met, and the child he didn't know how to protect. Grandpa, is this a place for the world's leftovers? He replied, no, this is for those the world threw away, but still shine. In the foundation's second year, Gilherme wrote a letter, not to Sophia, not to Clara, to himself. Gilherme, you were a coward, a man blind with pride and rich in fear. But here, surrounded by girls who smile with so little, you learned to Be human. Money opens doors, but the heart opens what truly matters. He left the letter on top of the old safe, now displayed in the foundation's main room, with a note taped to it. This once held a secret. Today, it holds a flower. The Clara Foundation was now known throughout the town, not for its structure, which was modest, but for what it did. It received pregnant girls, wounded girls, girls who had never heard you matter. They entered with heads down and left with their chins up. Guilherme, now over 70, walked slowly, but he spoke with purpose. He had a gentle look and a notebook where he wrote down every girl's dreams. He said it was so he wouldn't forget to root for them. One day, Clara Sophia came into his room with an envelope. This came for you. It was a plain envelope, no return address. Inside, a folded letter and a photo. In the photo, a woman with tied hair, sun-kissed skin, holding a newborn baby by a canoe on a river, the look in her eyes. It was hers. It was Sophia. Guilherme pressed the photo to his chest, closed his eyes, and felt the world collapse, but this time with gratitude. The letter said, Dad, I still don't know if I can forgive you, but I know you tried, and that is more than I ever expected. Clara Sophia is living proof that love can unlock even the oldest safe. This baby in the photo is called Esperanza Hope, and yes, she is my daughter. You're a grandfather again, and me, I'm slowly coming back, but today, from afar, I just want to say thank you for not giving up on us. Guilherme wept like he hadn't since the day Clara disappeared, but now the tears were made of light. The next morning, Clara Sophia found him sitting on the porch, clean shirt, combed hair. The kitchen lady said, you woke up earlier than usual. He smiled. I smelled nostalgia coming through the gate. Grandpa, she's coming, I know, but even if she doesn't, a part of her already returned, because each letter brings back a piece of me I thought was lost. Clara Sophia sat beside him. What do we do when pain becomes memory? He thought and replied, we plant it and wait for flowers. That night was calm. No wind, no rain, only the sound of trees. And the old clock ticking in the living room, marking the time of a man who learned to live after losing everything. When death came for Guilherme, it didn't arrive like a thief. It came like a long-awaited guest. He was ready. The bed was simple, white sheets, sunlight filtered through lace curtains. That smell of old wood. The pendulum clock gave its final tick-tock softly. On the nightstand, Clara's photo, Sophia's letter, and the angel pendant. Clara Sophia sat beside him, holding his hand. There was no fear in his face, just weariness and relief. You know, my dear, the man I once was would have hidden all this, would have died with the key in his pocket. But now, I leave everything wide open. Let them see, let them know, let them learn. She squeezed his fingers. Wrinkled, spotted skin, still warm. You were more of a father to me than many who carry the title. He smiled, eyes misty. You saved me, without even knowing. Every time you called me Grandpa, a rotten piece of me was ripped out, and what was left was the part worth keeping. She cried, silently. He closed his eyes. Promise me one thing, anything. Don't let them close the safe. Never. That night, he passed out. No pain, no noise. He simply left. The funeral was small. Only girls from the foundation, neighbors, and a few who had heard about the man who was once arrogant and became a shelter. In the center of the foundation's main hall, they placed the old safe, doorless, filled with flowers. Above it, on glass, no secrets are kept here, only truths bloom. And next to it, hanging on the wall, a mirror, so that every girl who passed by and looked inside the safe would see her own face and understand she deserves to be loved. Time passed. The foundation grew, became a school, a shelter, a lighthouse, and every week, a letter was read in the courtyard, letters from girls who were healing, letters that began with Grandpa, even without blood ties. Clara Sophia became a teacher, a mother, and the guardian of that legacy. And on windy nights, she still heard her grandfather's voice whispering, some people bet $1 million on a safe and lose everything, but some people open their hearts and find the world. The end.